Back in my corporate cubicle days, I used to lie awake at 3 a.m. just laying there on my back, staring at the ceiling, wondering like just one question, and just kept circling around in my brain, just different ways, but it was the same question kept hitting me. It was like, what if I'm wasting my life? I mean, on paper, I had everything that I was supposed to like make you happy. You know, the steady job, the decent income, the family to provide for, but like inside, I felt hollow. Have you felt that way before? Have you ever felt that sort of a disconnect? I mean, like you're living in someone else's version of success while the real you is actually suffocating underneath. That's how I felt. I mean, we've all been there. And here's what like I know I didn't understand at that time, and maybe it's something that hasn't quite clicked for you. You know, that feeling, it wasn't burnout. It wasn't like some sort of like midlife crisis or whatever, some sort of a cliche as a part of that. It was actually an awakening. My soul was like, it wasn't trying to derail where I was at or anything. Like it was trying to save me from where I'd gotten myself into. And so today I want to dive into this idea of how you take that maybe 3 a.m. feeling, that 3 a.m. panic, or that voice in your head, like, is this really it? And actually use it. You know, not as something to fear, but as fuel to create the most authentic chapter of your life possible. So this is going to be like your awakening into your authentic self. I want to dive deep into this with you. It's going to have such an amazing impact. Of course, let me just start by saying, welcome to the Giver Method channel. My name's Jake. So glad you're able to be here. Now, let me ask you a few questions that hopefully frame it a little bit more for you as a part of that. Like, have you ever looked successful from the outside? Like, you've checked all the boxes and everything, you know, of what you should have, you know, to feel good, feel successful, but like you feel completely empty on the inside. You know, or maybe you've caught yourself thinking like, I should be grateful for what I have, so why do I feel so miserable? You know, or maybe you've had that terrifying thought of like, what if I get to the end of my life and I realize like, I never actually lived my life? If any of that sounds familiar or you feel any sort of a connection to that, then hear me with this, like, there's nothing wrong with you. It's not a matter of being unselfish or ungrateful or falling apart. What this actually is it's you waking up. Like, think about it that way. You're waking up. And there should be some emotional connection with that. You know, there's tons of data out there, like tons of research. And I love doing research as a part of the book and these videos, like that they call this as like a sign of emotional or spiritual maturity happening. It's actually your authentic self refusing to keep living small in the way that you have been. Maybe that looks like you're a parent who wonders if you're modeling, you know, a quiet desperation instead of purpose to your kids. Maybe you're an entrepreneur who built something that looks like success, but secretly you feel like you're in a cage. Or maybe you're an employee clocking in every day, watching your talents just wither away as the years go by. Here's what people don't realize: like that you know, existential dread that you have isn't like it's not crisis just being shoved down. It's just a message to go decode. You know, it's your soul refusing to stay buried underneath everyone else's expectations. So let's dive deep into that. Like I mentioned, though, my name is Jake Talbert. I'm the founder. I'm the author of this book. It's called The Giver Method. Everything we're going to talk about today is grounded in my book. Like, there's principles and details that we pull from it. This is available on Amazon. So you could go get yourself a copy. Super easy. You could either go down the description, grab a copy, or you can pause the video and go to Amazon, look up The Giver Method by Jake Talbert. Right now, you can get it for as low as $2, $1.99. This is the best $2 that you could invest in yourself. It's going to change your life, and it's specifically meant for people like you and I. Parents, entrepreneurs, people who are working away, like, you know, getting things done. You know, it's all grounded in my story where I've walked a similar path to you. And so all the action items, exercise, everything in the chapters are designed for people like you. So you don't have to burn everything down and go move to the woods to make the change in your life that you want. Now, something that I know because I've been there was like, I used to be that guy in like the sea of cubicles. You know, as far as the eye could see with that hum of the fluorescent lights ahead, you know, helping people solve problems in ways that just came naturally to me. But I dismissed it as like just common sense. This is things that everyone should know, right? You know, have you felt that way before? Like, I've been living for like everyone else's approval while like the real gifts we have, they just sit on the bench. I've been there. I've felt that disconnect. What changed everything for me is when I stopped seeing that like the questioning as a weakness, and I started seeing it as wisdom. It wasn't ingratitude, it was guidance. It was my soul telling me like, hey, I was living like below my potential and the impact that I could go make. And when I finally learned that, leaned into it, it became like a roadmap to who I really was. And that's what we're unpacking today. So I want to take you through it. I've got these really the 6 key areas. There's kind of principles to look at that help you transform that dread from like a paralyzing fear into real momentum. And like, these aren't going to be fluffy ideas for you. It's like very practical tools for parents and entrepreneurs and employees, like who are already like using things that you're already using to stop like apologizing for wanting more and start building the lives that feel real and fulfilling again. You know, that dread shows up when your brain's like meaning, like your purpose, values, that your meaning in life detection, like you have a system that like recognizes there's a misalignment between how you're living and who you really are. You know, there's like an intelligence that's inside of you, just waiting, programming that's waiting to be pulled out. And when people respond with authentic change, my gosh, like there's all sorts of studies out there that show like you're going to see higher satisfaction, better mental health, and more energy within just a year. Think about that. Just totally change your life around within, by the end of the year. Now let me be clear. It's not about blowing up your life, abandoning any responsibilities. You're just decoding the wisdom that's already there. So everything we're covering today is grounded in the GIVER method, because when you start to uncover your gifts and develop them and share them, you stop living for the approval of others and you start making the kind of impact that actually is going to fill you, like, and just give you so much more energy. So you want to go dive deeper in it, like I said, get the link in the description. You can go to thegivermethod.com, learn about the other ways we work with people. Please join our newsletter list, of course. And at the same time, like, you go follow us on social media under the handle of the GIVER method. And if you're tired of navigating this type of thing alone, if you're ready to have someone like who's walked this path help you decode like your own questions around this and help you develop these gifts and superpowers, then we've opened up a few one-on-one coaching positions. You can go check out the link below, learn about how we work with you one-on-one in our coaching. And if you have lead a team, host a podcast, run some sort of mastermind, or have a community where this message would resonate with them, then there's a link down there about speaking and podcasting that we can dive deeper into that. And of course, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications so that you do not miss out on any of our future content. Now let's dive in. Let's take those moments of panic and fear and turn them into foundation for your life that feels like it's actually yours. And so the first one is listen to the signals. Like the first area is just listen to the signals. This is how you decode, am I wasting my life before it starts to eat you alive? Because that can be a haunting question, and it's not random worry in any sort of way. It's your soul's early warning system. It's like the check engine light saying, hey, something doesn't match with who you really are. Sure, you can keep ignoring it, but eventually there's going to be some problems with the engine. Now here's the truth. Your authentic self has been sending signals for years. That spark of energy, that you feel with certain conversations, that idea that just came so naturally to you, but you dismissed because they don't pay the bills. That pull forward to something that you care about, but you didn't feel qualified to take that next step. That's your soul. That's nudging you, and when you're in an override for a really long time, you're feeling burnout, stress, anxieties, anything like that. For too long, the gap between who you are and who you're pretending to be gets wider and wider. That dread makes it really set in, not to punish you, but just it's trying to wake you up. So here's some things that I want you to do, some things that you could consider. First one is you can become an energy detective, where for let's say a few days, a week or whatever, where you track what gives you life and what drains it. What feels good when you're done? What actually lights you up? And notice the conversations that, you're in the flow and time disappears, when you leave feeling more alive than instead of feeling depleted. Make notes of those things. Look for patterns in what those could be. Second, try go check in with your younger self. Write a letter to a version of you before you got really practical, before you started worrying so much about being responsible, and tell them about your life now. Would they be proud of the path that you've taken? Would they recognize you, or would they wonder what happened to their dreams? And the third thing, there's this idea of, they call it the deathbed test. You imagine yourself at 90 looking back and would you regret never trying? What things would you just be man, I wish I would have done that? What risks would you have been glad that you took, even if they didn't work out every time? And once again, it's not about being morbid in any way. It's just about stripping away everyone else's opinions and finding out what actually matters the most to you when all that noise is going to be gone. Because you can't change what you refuse to see. People never connect their daily frustration to the bigger truth. That misalignment between their values and their choices is happening. But if you learn to read those signals, that dread or that fear or whatever, it stops being a crisis and it's guidance. It points you in the right direction. So those questions that you get that pop in, the doubts, even if it's 3 a.m. or it's afternoon, wherever, they aren't here to torture you. They're just here to guide you to the life that you're meant to live. Now the second area is all about having true gratitude without any guilt behind it. Being thankful doesn't mean that you have to settle with where you are. Okay, so because it's a sneaky trap that people fall into, they get stuck inside of this like gratitude, like there's this guilt loop as a part of that, and it goes something like this: like I should be grateful. Other people have it worse. Who am I to want more? Things along those lines. Like, suddenly your gratitude becomes like a prison instead of fueling your growth. It's weaponized to keep you small in that sort of a way. But here's the truth: like gratitude, and growth, they're not enemies; they're actually teammates. And so you think of it like two wings of the same bird or whatever. Like gratitude is where you are, and your ambition is where you're going. You need both to fly. Real gratitude isn't about like pretending that you're satisfied when you're not. Like you may not be happy with where you're at, but you can have gratitude about the path that you've taken to get there. I appreciate that I've got this foundation, and now I'm ready to build on it. I'm ready to go forward. Wanting to express more of your gifts doesn't make you like ungrateful or selfish. It makes you human. It actually is signs of stewardship. You've been trusted with these talents, these passions, these values. Why wouldn't you want to use them? So let's talk about let's get you some very real ways that you can do this. So there's let's just start by expanding gratitude, where every morning jot down 3 things that you're genuinely thankful for. Ask how can I use these as fuel to get me to the next version of me? For example, hey, I'm grateful for my steady job, and I'm committed to finding ways to bring more creativity into it, or whatever version of that sounds like for you. If guilt shows up, run it through like the legacy question of like, hey, if your kids, your team, or people you influence are watching, what do you want them to see? Someone who settles because they should be grateful, or someone who models what it looks like to honor like gratitude and growth at the exact same time? And then a really simple exercise that you can do is you write out your values in a like in like an expansion statement, and so something like this. It's going to look something like this: like, hey, I'm grateful for whatever part of your life, fill in the blank, like this part of my life, and I'm committed to whatever the direction of growth is that you're going. For example, it's like, hey, I'm grateful for my family, and I'm committed to showing them what it looks like to live with real purpose, to live authentically. This keeps gratitude real while you're giving your authentic self room to breathe, because gratitude, when misunderstood, can become like one of the most socially accepted excuses for playing small. But if you reframe it as fuel, it gives you the permission to want more, not out of greed, but out of like trying to be more aligned with who you are. So remember, your desire for more isn't proof of ingratitude. It's proof of your authentic self, like that is refusing to be silenced as a part of that. That takes us to the third principle, which is like remembering who you were. Reconnecting with the old version of you that got buried under all the practicality that comes in day to day. Most of us didn't lose ourselves overnight. Somewhere along the way, we started just playing roles that felt safe or practical or expected. Psychologists actually call it identity foreclosure. Basically, like you're becoming who you thought you were supposed to be before you had a chance to actually go figure out who you really are. And when you live by someone else's script, like, man, it feels hollow. Like you're walking around in life that just, in clothes that don't fit. But, here's the part nobody's going to tell you. Your authentic version of yourself, it doesn't vanish. It just went underground. Those old dreams, the passions you had before, like that life convinced you would, like, you got to be realistic. You can't think about those. Like, those were childish. They're not. They're clues. They're actual sparks pointing you towards like what you're wired to care about and contribute and where you can express yourself. And if you reclaim this sort of an identity, like it isn't about reinventing yourself into something brand new. It's just about remembering who you actually were before the world piled on all these weird expectations. So let's talk about how you can actually use that. So once again, think about if you could jump on a time machine and have a conversation. Imagine sitting down with yourself at 10 and 15 and 20 years old. Ask like, hey, what lit me up back then? What did I think was possible? What did I dream about doing? And write what comes up without any sort of a filter or any sort of judgment. Just like these aren't silly daydreams by any means. They're breadcrumbs back to who you are authentically. And then run some sort of a curiosity check on yourself where you pay attention maybe for the next week or two. What naturally grabs your attention when nobody else is paying attention to you, nobody else cares? What topics make you lean in? What problems fire you up? What conversations give you energy instead of draining you? Your authentic interests don't disappear. They just get buried under the responsibility of routine. It's just a matter of starting to be more curious and open yourself back up to them. And then, of course, you could always try, there's the energy, memory mapping. You think back to specific moments where you felt the most alive, the most like you. Like, what were you doing? Who were you with? Maybe what gifts or qualities were you expressing? And look for the patterns that are there. You're going to start to see that maybe different environments, actions, or people make you be a more authentic version of yourself and come more alive. And then maybe it's a mission statement that you need to write around your authenticity. And I wrote one out because I'm going to read it because it's a little bit long. So it says, like, the person I was before life convinced me to be practical, loved to fill in whatever it is that you uncovered. And I'm committed to bringing more of that into who I am now. You know, it's not about quitting everything tomorrow. It's just about weaving more of your real self back into what you already have, because you can't build meaningful future on a false foundation in any sort of a way. You know, there's this emptiness that you feel like it isn't a lack of purpose. It's losing touch with your purpose that, you know, used to light you up. And once you reconnect with those, like, life is going to feel less like a survival mode and way more like you're living. That takes us into the fourth area. So, gosh, we got to turn your gifts back on, these superpowers, your hidden talents that you can use to make real impact. Because one of the biggest reasons you might be feeling that emptiness is because, like, these natural gifts aren't being used. You have these talents, insights, abilities that could make this massive difference in people, but they are hidden, underused, or only applied in ways that don't really matter to you. And it creates that gnawing sense of, like, waste. You know, it's often referred to as talent decay. You know, and you got this fear that if you don't use your abilities, like, that they're going to wither away. You know, but here's the shift. Like, that the drain we're talking about, the fear of that's pulling at you, like, might not be a life problem. It might just be that your gifts are begging for some airtime. You know, things that come so naturally to you that you dismiss them as, like, well, it's not special, everyone can do that. Like, those might be exactly the contributions that people around you are waiting for, because, like, they feel effortless to you, like you undervalue them. Let me say this to you very clearly. You're the only person that has your unique combination of gifts and superpowers and experiences. You are the only person out there who can make the impact that you were born to make. You, that's it. No one else can make the impact that you can make, because no one else has the same combination of these gifts and superpowers or experiences. No one else has walked the exact same road as you. So use that. I mean, my goodness, turn these gifts on. Let's start using them. It's not about finding these, you know, secret superpowers people have never heard of. Like, it's just recognizing the strengths that you've already had and deciding to use them with very real intention. That's when impact becomes visible and your sense of meaning just will expand. So here's some areas to think about, and this is one of my favorite topics because the G in GIVER stands for your gifts. You know, your gifts and superpowers. Whoop, this side, G. Stands for gifts and superpowers. So here's some things that you can try. You know, so think about, like, the invisible impact, like taking an inventory where you ask, maybe go to 3 people that you trust. You know, hey, what do I do that makes life easier or better or more meaningful? You can be shocked at what people say. Often others see our gifts way more clearly than we do because they feel the impact of it firsthand. Whatever they say, look for the patterns. You know, what are the road signs that they're giving you, pointing you back to who, like, what you already have on the inside, what's in your toolkit that you already have available to you. And then try your gift, like some sort of a gift expression challenge where you pick one thing you can do, one ability, talent, skill, gift, and, like, you know, something small, natural, and maybe even obvious, and use it intentionally for the next 2 weeks to 30 days. You know, if you're good at breaking down complex problems, offer that skill in conversations at work. You know, if you have a gift for making people feel safe and included, create space for someone new in your circle. Once again, it's not about reinventing life overnight. It's just about proving to yourself that your gifts matter right now and you can use them. And of course, there's this value creation, like, question that you can ask yourself where it's like, instead of generic, like, you know, self-improvement, get specific about the, like, sharpening what you already do well. You know, if you're naturally good at encouraging, like, learn how to motivate more effectively. If you're great at organizing chaos, like, great, then study facilitation. Like, small investments can multiply your natural abilities into, like, just real lasting impact, because nothing gets away, you know, like, at your soul. Like, nothing's going to eat away at your soul like unused gifts, you know, just sitting there. You know, people who actually use their strengths every single day, they're 6 times more likely to be extremely engaged in their work and 3 times more likely to say that they're living a great life. Here's the thing, when you finally start expressing them, like, what's already inside you, that means you stop chasing meaning and you start creating it. And this goes above, like, the needing the achievements or the applause. Like, this is a deep satisfaction of knowing that you're giving to the world something that, like, only you can give. And that takes us to the 5th one. So, like, the power of small pivots, tiny shifts, like, they lead to big life changes. That's why I'm saying you don't have to burn everything down, go move to the woods to find yourself. It's one of the biggest lies people like believe when, you know, they hit that like, man, I feel like I'm wasting my life. You know, when they hit that wall, they think that the only way out is to blow everything up. I got to quit my job. I got to move across the country. I got to reinvent everything overnight. And because of that, it feels too scary and they end up doing nothing. But the truth is, like, transformation usually doesn't come from dramatic overhauls. It comes in small, steady pivots that gradually shift you towards that alignment. You know, think about sailing. You don't whip a boat around every time the wind changes. You just make tiny, gradual adjustments with the sail. You know, over time, those small moves take you an entirely different destination. Life works the same way. You know, the little choices that you make every day compound into massive changes over time. You know, the secret is like you learn to notice this, like your authenticity, like pivot points that are there. You know, these are going to be those small and everyday moments where you can either like play the part everyone expects of you or choose to honor who you really are. The good news is, like, you get dozens of opportunities to do this every single day. It's just a matter of noticing them. So here's how you do this. Like, the first thing is, like, what are your daily authenticity choices, where each morning you're going to ask yourself, like, what's one way I can choose authenticity over approval or performing today? You know, maybe it's speaking up in a meeting. Maybe it's, you know, saying no to something that drains you, whatever. Like, small, real choices are going to build momentum. Then think of, like, trying the 1% shift. You know, look at your life and ask, like, well, what would 1% more like authentically me look like if I started doing that this week? You know, that could be adding more creativity to your work. You know, it could be more present at bedtime with your kids. It could be more honest about what you need from your friends. You know, 1% doesn't sound like much, but like you stack those up over time and you're living a totally different life in no time at all. And then practice strategic boundaries. Put the boundaries, like, not like I'm trying to build walls to keep people out, but I'm trying to protect what's valuable to me. You know, if you don't like, you don't like feel like you have to do everything at once, like just start small. Practice saying no to maybe one thing. Maybe speak up. You know, I'm gonna say yes to something that gives me more energy and more power. I'm gonna start pushing other things away so I can create these authenticity muscles and how I show up. And then, like, there's alignment experiments that you can do all day long. You know, where you pick an area of your life that feels off and you just test a small shift. Your commute feels maybe soul-sucking. Try a different route. You know, maybe try listening to a book or a podcast that inspires you along the way. If you feel disconnected from your kids, start having some intentional conversations, whatever. Like, don't wait until you can change everything to start experimenting, like, where you are right now. Because big dramatic changes are exhausting and they're very unsustainable. But the small and authentic changes, man, that's going to happen. Like, that's going to pivot things for you so much faster. And then, of course, that takes us to our last one, number 6, which is like that turning the restlessness into direction. So how do we take that dread and use it as your compass? Because the part that most people don't realize is like that, man, I feel like I'm wasting my life. That dread, you know, it's not a deflect, like it's the data point you're looking for. You know, that restlessness isn't to tear you down, it's to point you toward what really matters. The mistake that most people try to make is like they try to silence it. They drown it out with busyness or scrolling away on their phone or guilt themselves into thinking like, I should just be grateful. But gratitude can't fix misalignment. People who truly transform their lives are the ones who stop treating that dread like it's an enemy and they use it as like a feedback. You're like, thank you for that. Hey, you know, you're drifting too far from who you really are. Hey, thanks for letting me know. Let's get back to it. And once you learn to listen, you don't have to fear it. Like, it's not a midlife crisis or a quarter life crisis or whatever. Like, instead, these are just early detection systems, a warning light that's gone off that you know you can go do something about. And so here's the things you can do. You know, start listening to yourself. The next time that voice shows up, like, what if I'm wasting my life? Don't shove it down. Ask it like, well, what are you trying to tell me here? Like, what feels off? What are we protecting ourselves from? You know, treat it like you would a wise mentor giving some tough love. You know, use that discomfort as direction instead of just like sitting in the restless energy. Ask yourself, like, what do I need to shift as a part of my life to feel more aligned? You know, maybe I need some more honesty in some of my relationships. I need more creativity at my work. I need to be more present with my kids, whatever. You're not trying to complain. You're just trying to translate the discomfort into some sort of a clarity. And then, like, you know, do some check-ins with yourself once a month. Give yourself 15 minutes to reflect on, like, where am I aligned with, like, am I aligned with who I'm becoming? Or where am I just settling? Where am I performing? What's one shift that I can make right now that helps me be more authentic to myself? And then write it down. Those check-ins really do become a map of your growth along the way, because like when you stop running from this dread and you start listening to it, it becomes one of your greatest allies. Okay, tons of data out there show that people who can find meaning in their struggles build like these like the spiritual resilience they need, the ability to navigate life with purpose no matter what comes at them. So that's the shift. Like this panic that hits you in the middle of the night, in the middle of the day, middle afternoon, whatever, like it stops being a problem to fix and it starts becoming the wisdom you can use, like to start living a more authentic life, making better connections. And so if you're lying awake at night thinking that like you're wasting your life, or you get those panic, anxiety points, like there's like, this should hopefully be a breakthrough for you. That question, is your soul saying like, hey, like, let's stop being on autopilot and like, let's actually start to live. Everything we walked through today, from noticing the signals, to stop ignoring them, like, reframing your gratitude, all different things, like they're really practical tools to help you use your gifts to make really small course connections along the way. Like they're built to live within the life that you live and help you change where you're at. The dread that you've been running from is not to punish you. It's been here to protect you. And that wisdom is letting you like, well, gosh, I'm spending my life in ways that don't matter to me. How can I pivot that forward? The things we talked about today, like they're just like a pathway back to your authenticity. You can listen to the discomfort. You can let it guide that, and fuel you along the way. You treat that dread not as a crisis, but as some honest feedback. Now, here's the real shift. You stop asking like, what if I'm wasting my life? And start asking like, how do I make sure I'm living it? How can I show up more authentic and make the impact I'm trying to make? This is what the GIVER method is all about, is discovering your gifts and developing them in ways that you can share them, that makes your life feel full and not hollow. And so if you want to go deeper, that's where, like I said, get a copy of the book. Everything we talked about, like get a copy of the book. It's on Amazon. The link is in the description. You can go to thegivermethod.com, learn more about us. If you don't want to figure it out on your own, and you want to turn these questions of like, what am I trying to do? How am I get to that next level into real life momentum? Then check out the coaching page down in the link. Check out the details on that. If it makes sense for us to do a call, let's do a call and talk about it. And if you lead a team, run a podcast, or gather people anywhere at some sort of an event, and you feel like something like this would serve them, then let's talk about what that could look like. I would love to schedule time and talk through what that could look like. Here's the thing. The existential crisis people are having, like the thing you've experienced, isn't here to ruin you. It's to wake you up. And when you start taking even the small steps of authenticity back, like to who you are, you stop fearing that you stop fearing, you stop regretting that sort of thing. You start proving day by day that you're actually living who you are. So, before you go, please drop a comment. Let me know what your biggest takeaway is. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap that bell for notifications so that you do not miss out on anything else we have to cover. Because here's the thing, like the truth is, like the question isn't about whether you're wasting your life. The question is like, what are you going to do with the time that you have left to make sure that you're not? Your authentic life is already waiting for you. It's time for you to stop doubting it and start living it. You are the only person who can make the impact you were born to make. The only person has your unique combination of gifts and superpowers and experiences, so you are the only person who can make the impact that you can make. So start making it. You'll be amazed at how much it will change your life and how you will feel so much more fulfilled as you do. And I'll just say thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for watching here at the GIVER Method channel. We'll catch you in our next video, and have a great rest of your day.